Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leja, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.
We're back at you in Gloves Off, and today, this episode is number 900, and I want to thank everybody for continually watching, supporting, calling in for information, talking about issues. And today's issue is with somebody special that's been here in Laredo for a long time, a former city councilman who filed a lawsuit against the city of Laredo as an injunction for the $417 million bond. Today we have Poncho Casso. How are we doing today, Poncho? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Just working on some other lawsuits I'm going to file against the city. So, yeah, I mean, I'm doing well. I'm working hard like everybody else to try to get the word out to vote against this bond issue, because it's right now it's not the time to be passing bond issues. We don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs, and with the economy, we have a lot of inflation. So this isn't the time to be raising taxes for a bond issue. And the reason I filed this lawsuit is because what they're doing is they're basically what they're doing, which is illegal, is they're using taxpayer money for political advertising. And the elections code only allows a municipality to do that if they're only providing information, and it's got to be impartial information. So you can't advocate. You can't be promoting the bond issue. All you can do is provide information, and they're not doing that. They're promoting it, and they're also providing, and they're also illegally providing incorrect information, factually incorrect information. So that's why I'm finding it. So I think it's unfair that they're using our money, and then they're lying to us about the bond issue, the impact of the taxes, how much the taxes are going to be, and lying about a bunch of other stuff. Basically, they're advocating. And so that's what it's about. And then I just bring out a bunch of other things they're doing that are illegal. Not only that they're violating the elections code, but they're violating the city charter as well. And one of the things that they did in the last election, the presidential, the mayor had this campaign called Vote 2024. And so the city manager created this program called the Service Shift Program. So what they do is they get employees from various departments who want to volunteer, and they still get paid, and they get to block walk, knock on doors during working hours, and they get paid for it. And I provided some of those exhibits as well. It's a 20-page petition with about 50 exhibits. And I know it's going to be very difficult to get an injunction. I know it's going to be difficult, but at least it exposes their shenanigans, all the illegal activities that they're doing, and hopefully it will influence, persuade the voter to vote against it, because it's not in our best interest. Laredo right now has the highest delinquency rate for mortgages in the country. We're number one. So when they're just lying about how much the taxes are going to go. For example, they'll use 100,000. There's no houses worth 100,000. And then they use psychological pricing. They'll say it's only going to be $8.33 a month when nobody pays their taxes by the month. And then they don't include commercial, the commercial real estate. So many elderly people, they claim, well, elderly people, their taxes are frozen, but elderly, a lot of them depend on rental income also. So their taxes are going to go up on their commercial property that they own. And worst of all, they're saying, well, the estimated appraised value is only going to go up 2%. That's not true. It's been 10% every year. And that's just for homesteads, because homesteads get capped at 10%. Commercial, there's no cap. It can go up 30%, the appraisal. So they're just lying to the voters, and they're not supposed to be advocating. They're supposed to just put the information out there. It's got to be impartial, and that's it. And that's the only time the law allows them to use taxpayer money for political advertising. But that's not what they're doing. They're advocating. And so, people need to be aware that. And then what's happening, too, is that they chose the May election. There's a House bill right now, House Bill 19, that's trying to make it illegal to have bond elections during the month of May. You can only have them, they only want you to have them in November, because in May you don't have any candidates. So you have historic low voter turnout. So that's giving the city the advantage, the special interests that control the city. And which are they? It's the firemen and the policemen. They give so much money to candidates. And I showed that, in my brief, I put it in there, how much money these people get, some of these council members, and yet they still vote. They should really be recusing themselves, and they don't. And so there's, it's a lot of things that they're doing that's just illegal. And it's okay for them to get, they think it's okay to vote themselves a salary increase and a pension. And then on top of everything, all the inflation we've had for the last year or so, they think that this is the time to float a bond issue. And the bond issue, most of it's just going for a 35-acre police headquarters, 20 acres for a training facility, and another 15 for a headquarters. I mean, like, if they think, like, first of all, they're always touting how safe Laredo is. Well, then why do you need to spend that kind of money? I mean, what I don't understand is, what are they doing with all the tax money every year? They get millions more from new properties that are added to the tax roll, plus they get more due to the valuation. So what I don't get is, what are they doing with that money? I know what they're doing. It's a rhetorical question. They're using it to balance the budget. That's what they're doing, because they're living beyond their means. Because that extra money should be used for capital improvement projects, and they're not doing that. So now they're coming to us and they want to borrow money, and they're lying to us about how much our taxes are going to go up. It's just, and then they lie that they came out and they said that they haven't changed. The city manager wrote a letter to the editor, to the Laredo Morning Times, and said that our tax rate has been going down for the last 2 decades. That's 20 years. That's not true. I showed, I added the exhibits to my brief where that's not true. For 11 years, we had the same tax rate. And the only reason they lowered the tax rate last year is because if they wouldn't have lowered it, it would have triggered an automatic election on the adopted rate. And they couldn't, there's no way they're going to come to us to ask us for a tax rate election. So they had to lower it by law. They had no choice. And they actually had it they had it at the same rate as the rollback election, which now they changed the term. Now it's called no voter. It's a completely different name that they call it. They don't call it the rollback, but they lowered it to match the rollback. So they didn't really give us a tax rate. And every year what they do that really pisses me off to no end is every year they come out and they say, we lowered the tax rate. We lowered your taxes because we lowered the tax rate. And that's not true, because tax rates, you can't compare this year's adopted to last year's adopted rate. You never compare it to last year's rate. You cannot. What you do is you compare it to the no new revenue rate. The no new revenue. There's 3 tax rates. It's the rollback, the no new revenue, and then the adopted. You compare it to the no new revenue. The only way you will not raise taxes is if you adopt the no new revenue rate, and they never do that. So they always claim that they lowered your taxes, and it's not true. And even by their own admission, last year they on the public notice in the newspaper, it says we raised your taxes 9.8% or something like that. I think it was 9.8%. And then they have by law they have to state how many millions of dollars more in tax revenue they raised. So they haven't lowered taxes. I mean, they just haven't, and they're lying about it. And quite frankly, I don't think they're going to be able to cover the cost for what they want to do. Because
now, you mentioned a lot of information here that's going on there. Number one is the advocating of a bond through the city, and I must agree that's what it seems that's going on. And
yeah.
The second part, they always use the stuff about safety, that they're safest one, and it's the safest city. And now they came up that without these improvements or these bonds, the future of Laredo is stagnant. In other words, the Laredo's doesn't have a future if we do not vote for these bonds. That right there is kind of like coercion into the people. Listen, we're either if you do this, if bond, we'll move forward. If not, we're going to hold you back. That, to me, that's what it sounds like. And the next one is that they use is we haven't had a bond election in 32 years, but didn't we have a bond election a couple of years ago for a civic center?
Yeah, in fact, it's in my brief and in the Laredo Morning Times article that came online today, which should be published. It should come out in the print edition tomorrow on Sunday. I mentioned we had it in 2014. We had it in 2014. We had it for the sports complex. Then in 2018, we had another bond issue to change the location of the sports complex from TAMU to South Laredo. And then we also had the Civic Center, and the Civic Center didn't pass. So they're lying that we haven't had a bond election in 32 years. And not only is it factually incorrect, you can't say that, because by saying that you haven't had a bond election in 32 years, you're advocating. It's like you going to your mother and say, "Hey, Mom, I haven't had any ice cream in a week." You're advocating. You're trying to persuade your mother to get you some ice cream. It's the same thing. They can't be persuading. They're supposed to just put. They're not supposed to put when the last time we had a bond election. They're basically saying, "Hey, it's time for another bond election because we haven't had one in 32 years." And not only that, they're lying about it. So they're breaking the law twice. They're advocating and they're lying about it. So, and they think that that the voters, too ignorant to check their facts, and their facts have not been independently verified. They also mentioned that their bond, that how much we owe is only, they mentioned, I think 187 million or something. That's false. You can go to the Texas Bond Review Board and it's all there. It shows you how much they owe. So they're lying about that. And then why would you invest money in depreciating assets like police cars? Why don't you pay that from the bridge revenues? Don't go borrow money for that. It's like borrowing money for a car. That's how most people do it. But you're better off just buying a used car, right? And paying cash and borrowing, on a new car. It's a depreciating asset. I wouldn't borrow on it. I would just take the monies out of the general fund and pay for some of those. Don't buy 30 cars at one time. Buy 10 this year, maybe 10 the following year, and do that instead of financing a depreciating asset. It doesn't make any sense to be doing that. And not only bridge revenues are probably going to go down. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs. I think it's going to work out, but we don't know. And look what happened during the pandemic. I demonstrated there. I put some exhibits there where our bridge revenues took a dip. They went down. And if you think that during the pandemic it was bad, it'll be worse with the tariffs. It'll be a lot worse. So
negative. It's go bad. It's gonna if the tariffs go into the negative, not a positive movement. It's going to be bad, very bad, and we're going to feel it right now. And there's a lot of things that we're not feeling right now, and we're not looking at. One is that trans railroad system in Mexico that China's helping build from the Pacific, connecting it to the Gulf. that's going to be a transport directly on cargo from the Pacific over there. So they're going to bypass all these trailers that are coming up here through the other ports. So the ports are going to be Brownsville, Corpus, all the, we're going to lose out because, I guess.
They think, let me tell you, people say, well, how does the city of Austin do it? They have a cash cow like we have a cash cow. Our cash cow is the bridges. Their cash cow is the utilities department. They own a power plant over there. So that's how they subsidize their taxes. What subsidizes our property taxes right now, or ad valorem, are the bridge revenues. If we didn't have a bridge, our taxes would be twice as high as they are now. I mean, those bridge revenues subsidize our taxes. So I've always been, my position's always been, you need to wean yourself from those taxes. Like the county, their cash cows are minerals. When the oil business goes down and the gas business goes down, they hurt. That's their cash cow. Our cash cow is the bridges. So what you need to do is wean yourself from those bridge revenues. Don't use it to balance the general fund. And that's what they're doing. But nobody knows how much exactly is transferred over, because you have to look very closely. What it says in the budget, they call it charges for services. So the general fund charges the bridge revenue and they transfer millions over. And when I was on the city council in 1994, we had a certain percentage by ordinance that was from the bridge revenues that was used for paving streets. Now they want to borrow money for streets. How much do they want to borrow for streets? I don't know how many million they want to borrow. They should be paving those streets right now with the bridge revenues, but they can't, because 60% of the budget is going for police protection and fire protection. And sometimes it's even higher. I'm just going based on what the adopted budget said right now. It's at 59.9%. So it's been higher. 60% of their budget goes for public safety already. And so, and San Antonio had the same problem with the police union and the fire unions, the same problem. They're a very powerful interest group, and they need to realize, that not everything is they can't get everything they want. And why don't they expand the headquarters at the airport? And what their argument is? Well, we can't, because by law they're not. Federal government won't allow us. That's a bunch of BS. Because when I was on the council, we sold 50 acres to Mercy Hospital. All you have to do is ask permission to the government, because we get military assistance monies. They're called MAP monies. And so the government is not going to deny you. If you want to expand the police headquarters, they'll allow you to do it. So that's a bunch of BS where they're saying that we can't do it. So now they want to just completely, construct a new one. I mean, they're
not only that, they're spending about $30,000 per month at towards the airport on the current police headquarters. And what happens with that is they're going to have to renovate it to whatever department they're going to put in there, and they're still going to be paying $30,000 a month. That's what they're not telling us again.
Yeah, they want to either give it to Parks and Rec or the Utilities Department. I think it's Parks and Rec is next door, right? I think that's who's next door to them, Parks and Rec, or is it Utility? Because they've had meetings there, and I've gone to meetings there. They've had like meetings for the public there. It's right next door to the police department. And so once they move them in there, they're going to have to refurbish the entire building. The point is, with rising costs right now due to inflation, which is what happened to the county with the fairgrounds, with the HEB, all of a sudden, the cost of material is more. You borrowed $10 million and now it costs you 15 to build. So, they're not going to be able to afford to do what they want to do. I mean, they're not. They're going to. And right now, there's certain bills in the legislature, House Bill 19 that I was referring to, that wants to change how much they can use for maintenance and operation, which is complex. I don't want to get into it, but they do a lot of things right now. They cheat. They go around. They do a lot of stuff, man, that the municipalities do to still raise your taxes, But remember, Abbott capped them at 3.5%. So they're going to have a very difficult time. And right now, what they ought to be doing is focusing on the water. But they're going to tell you, yeah, but that's a revenue fund. That's an enterprise fund. And that gets paid strictly by the ratepayer. They're right. But if you're going to increase our water bill from $50 to $100 as an example, most people will say, okay, we're going to pay $100 now a month on water when we used to pay 50. But then on top of that, you're going to raise our taxes because the police department wants to build Quantico. They think they're the FBI or what? That's just outrageous. And then they want the fire department wants more fire trucks. And most of the time their fire truck is parked at the Exxon and they're panhandling. If they want to do charity work, hey man, it's, why don't you take it out of your paycheck and do it through United Way or take it out of the PAC? But they shouldn't have our fire trucks parked at the Exxon while they're panhandling and exposing the city to municipal liability. So there's a lot of things they can do, and they're not doing it. And right now it's not the time to float a bond issue. And people are hurting people are hurting right now. I mean, they are.
I see that in small businesses are closing left and right. They're opening up and they're going kaput, and they're not making it. And they're not making it because of the economy that we have right now. The most degrading thing that they said, and I've heard this myself, and I had heard many others say the following. They were told it's only a hamburger a month. You know that there's kids out there that can't even eat a hamburger. A hamburger for them is a luxury. And they're trying to demean it in that sense. These representatives that said that,
oh, and then they're extorting. Let's not forget about the extortion letter. I put that in there. I said, and I've asked for open records. I wanted a copy of that original letter. And, they're waiting till the 10th day. I guess they got wind that I was going to sue or something. So they didn't want to give me the original letter. But the city manager, but I know the letter is not a bogus letter, because then the city manager responded on the city's website he tried to backpedal, right? But he's over there telling the Laredo Economic Development Corporation, we give you $560,000 every year. And of course, it comes from the hotel motel, right? It doesn't even come from ad valorem tax. We give you $560,000 every year. But if you don't get behind the bond measures, we're gonna, you run the risk of losing them. He's basically threatening them. And then they got the chamber to go along, but the chamber wanted certain conditions, and they're not going to meet those conditions. So yeah, they're advocating. And another thing that they're doing is on the block walking. I have how much they spent in advertising, and then how much the employees, some employees make $30 an hour, some 40, some less, and they showed how much they spent block walking. They have their influencers. They have it on the spreadsheet, influencers. So right there, bingo, you're using the word influencers. You can't influence an election. It's against the city charter to even get involved, to even use taxpayers' money to influence a local election. You cannot do that. So I know it's going to be very difficult to get a bond election, to get an injunction done, but at least it'll somebody texted me today and say, there's many people that don't even know there's an election going on. My mother told me the same thing this morning. There are a lot of people who don't know. So at least I'm bringing some attention to it, and it'll help defeat the bond election. But more importantly, I'm going to come back and I'm going to sue them on the pensions and salaries. There's people on social media that keep putting there, when are you going to do something about that? And that's another issue that really angers the hell out of me, and a lot of people too. What they went in there and voted themselves a pension, and now the salaries, they went and they transferred their expenses and they added it to the salaries. And that's just, it's just so wrong on so many levels. And they did it during the high inflation when eggs were like $10 a dozen or whatever it was. These people don't care. They don't care.
Poncho, right now, people are calling and sending me messages and stating that both the firemen and the police now want a raise. $5,000 for one, $10,000 for the other one. That the police are not the highest paid police, and they get paid very good money. Okay.
Oh, you know what else I've heard? That UISD on the heels of this bond election, whether, I don't know, maybe if it doesn't pass, they won't do it, or maybe if it doesn't pass, they will do it, because then but they're going to go to bond issue too, and then LISD is going to do the same thing. So you see, that's another thing that's called the composite tax rate. A lot of people say, well, but you have to look at the composite, which means everyone in Laredo pays 4 taxing entities. They pay Webb County, the city, and one of the school districts, and LCC. So there's 5 taxing entities, but everybody pays 4 out of the 5, depending on whether you live in USD and LISD. So you got to look at all of those taxes. So when you add them together, you know, a $200,000 home is not, you just don't look at the city tax. You got to look at everything. So, yeah, this is not the time to be borrowing money. And I don't think they thought it out very well. You know, by the statements they make, and that's what I get into. You know, I mean, I go in there and I look at what they say, and then being on the council, I know how it works, and you know. And let me tell you, the last time we had a bond election, I know what they're referring to when they say 32 years. The last time we had a bond election was when I was in office. Okay, and when I was in office, we passed everything except the convention center, and I was against the convention center, but we passed everything else. We got a new police station. We got a new airport. We got 4 recreation centers. We got the fire training facility. We got some fire stations. We got the library. And then we eventually, and on a separate thing, we had the transit center downtown. That's the last time. My council was the most progressive council we've ever had. But we went to the voters and we asked permission, and there was a need. We paid for it. And now they're coming back, you know, saying 32 years later, and it's not true, because we've already had a bond election in 2014 and 2018, but they're going about it the wrong time. This is not the time to be doing it. You know, it's kind of like the county. The sheriff wanted a jail, and we do need a new jail. We need a new jail, Paul. We do. Oh, there's no question about it. But he put everything together instead of separating it like the city. The city has 4 different measures. He put it all together, and boom, everybody voted against because it was too high. So what does a county do? Instead of maybe waiting 3 years, because by law you have to wait 3 years, come back to maybe just have a jail, and because we do need a new jail. No, without even going to the voters, they go and they spend the same amount of money on the fairgrounds. That's what bothers the voter. You don't come and ask us permission. That's what House Bill 19 is going to change. You're not going to be able to issue certificate of obligations. That's what amazes me about the city is, why didn't they just forget about going to the taxpayer? They could have just floated COs and they wouldn't have had to ask permission. But now that they're going with a bond issue, they're not going to be able to do anything for 3 years, and they can't float COs anymore. I don't know why they didn't do it the other way. They could have done it. They could have issued COs. They wouldn't have to come. That's what the county did with the fairgrounds, and you don't have to go to the voter. Then you know what we would have to do? We'd have to go get signatures to stop it, which is very difficult to do. But at least they came to the voters, which is good that they came to the voters, because they could have easily gone behind our back and issued COs. But they came to the voters because they know they're going to raise the taxes. Their taxes are going to go up. And they got to ask permission if you're going to, you just can't go float that many COs. But the county did it. The county did it. The county went and did it and didn't even ask permission.
What's your honest opinion on the voter turnout and how it's going to go?
I don't think it's going to pass. But the reason I filed this lawsuit is that I am worried that the special interest groups, if you've got over 1,000 firemen and policemen together, about 1,100 together, and that's not including City Hall, and then they bring their spouses, let's say that only 80% of them are for it, you're talking 1,700 votes automatically that they have against us. They're already, those votes are already in the bank. So they have an advantage over us. But I think that the only people that are going to go vote are people who are against it, other than the police union and the fire union, because people, I think it's going to fail. I don't think it's going to pass. I think everybody I talk to doesn't want it. They say they're crazy.
Everybody I see, everybody I talk to, everybody that messages, they're all against. And it's not that they're against the police or the fire, they're against the timing and they're against this administration and what they've been doing. And
let me make perfectly clear that I've always supported public safety. Yeah, and when I was on when I ran for city council, I was endorsed by the Laredo Police Officer Association. Of course, I never got the amount of money that they get that the fire unions now have. It's amazing how much money they have. It wasn't like that in '94. I don't even know if their PAC even existed because they never gave money. They just lent you their support, which meant they were going to go out and vote for you. And even then, I wonder how much it really helped. But I've always been for public safety. So, and they make it sound like, oh, if you're not for this bond issue, that means you're against the police department. No, that's further from the truth. That's not true. That is not true. That's not true. What right now, the timing is really bad, and there's better ways of doing it. And then one council member, she said, well, they can't have meetings because the current building is too small. Well, rarely do they have a meeting with all the police department together. They don't have meetings with all of them. And if they do, go to the arena and have your meeting there, or pick up the phone, call UISD, and you can go to the auditorium right there in the south over here. Sometimes they have their board meetings. I mean, what's this thing? Oh, we're going to build a new headquarters because they don't have enough space to have meetings. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, they should be on the street patrolling. And if we're the safest city, it's like me telling you, Paul, I need a new house so I can sleep better at night. The new house isn't going to do it for me. Maybe if you bought me a new bed, right? But not a house, right? Unless I don't have air conditioning. Well, they're like saying, give us a new building, give us 35 acres so we can have this beautiful building. And because if we don't, Laredo's going to be more dangerous. It doesn't. We have too many other needs, and what about constructing another bridge? I don't think that's going to happen now. The way things are going, we're supposed to construct a bridge for the county,
especially on the safety, and they're using it like if you don't give us this new headquarters, Laredo's not going to be as safe, or it's not going to be safer if you don't give us this. There's a lot of things that go on. Police presence in the West.
And the fire department, I think there's that much of an incentive for the fire union to go vote. It's really the police. Why? Because there's only one fire station that they're going to get, and they're going to relocate two others. And they might get a few fire engines. But that's not the to me, it's just the police department that's getting everything. But you know what I think also is that the TERS, they give these TERS out to developers who are wealthy developers to the prime land, and those TERSs were designed to subsidize property that's dilapidated, property that is not the best property in the town. It's not going to invest on its own. So they're giving tax breaks to some of the wealthiest developers, and that's why they need more fire stations too. That's what's going on here. That's part of it. So, if you're going to be giving tax breaks to certain developers, and then you want the rest of us to pay for it, I don't think it's fair. And
absolutely. Any news on when the lawsuit goes in, or they haven't given you anything like that on?
No, I mean, I got to go back and file an application on Monday, an application that goes with it, but I already filed it on Thursday. But, I don't know first of all, a local judge is not going to want to hear it. He's going to have to recuse himself. They're going to have to get an out-of-town judge. And I don't know if it's even going to happen in time to do that. And, and injunctions are very, very difficult. I could have just filed a writ with a declaratory relief. To do that for the next suit, and whatever didn't really make it in this one, whatever isn't really heard, it's going to go back to the other one because it's just as pertinent. Because you see, my biggest beef with them is they're violating the city charter. That's the beef that I have. That's what they're doing, and I want to challenge certain ordinances and enforce one. And I want the courts to enforce the city charter. Are they going to do that? I don't know. They may not. They may or not. They may and may not. But I will say this: the injunctions are difficult. So I don't know. I'm going to have to see if, before the elections. But I know the judge is not going to stop the election because early voting already started. I know it's going to be difficult, but officially the election date's May 3rd. It would be beautiful if he stopped it, because I'm going to tell you right now, Paul, if it passes, you better be prepared for higher taxes. And they're not going to do what they want to do.
Let me tell you one thing. If you have a small business out there, the rents of commercial places are going to go up. Your rents right now are skyrocketing. It's outrageous, the amount. Mm-hmm. If you want to construct something and you need to construct something inside a rental property, you need to get a temporary electric permit. In Laredo, to get a building inspector to go out and give you a temporary electrical permit is anywhere between 15 to 25 days. So that's already a month out that you're paying rent on something that you're not getting revenue out of. So, and the way these building inspectors are and the way they behave, and there's a problem. There's a huge problem. And it's heartbreaking. By the time many small businesses are able to open their business, they're already under. Okay. And it happens so fast because of that lack of time, or either they do it on purpose or they're just lazy or whatever. And so we have a problem with building inspection. And when you complain about it, they do nothing about it. There's many people that have complained. They threaten people when they go out there. I was threatened last year. I made a formal complaint, and my wife was harassed. I made a formal complaint with Neb and with Landine and them, and nothing ever happened. It's kind of like, they're still there playing pocket pool and nothing happened. And so what occurs is we have a problem there. So small businesses are going to take a good hit, another hit, and a lot of them are not going to be around. And people say, oh, you can't talk that way. That's very negative. No, the negativity is coming from the city. And maybe it'll be better to go move your small business to a more small business friendly city like McAllen, like the Valley, like San Antonio, like Austin. They're a lot more small business friendly. Okay. Now let's talk about, we're the number one port. Import export is the number one. We're the number one, period. We're always claiming to be, and by numbers and so on and so forth. How about these $20 million warehouses, $30 million warehouses, $5 million warehouses that are out there? They're going to get hit with the property.
They're going to pay a lot. They're going to pay a lot of taxes. I mean, a lot
and
of taxes.
These individuals sometimes don't even have a voice
and
here.
People who don't own property think, well, it's not going to affect me. Yes, it is, because you pay rent. And what's going to happen is the person who's renting you that apartment or that house, all he's going to do, he's going to increase your rent by the increase in taxes. And he's going to divide it by the number of tenants that he has. That's what he's going to do. So your taxes will go up. And it's not going to be a small amount. It's not. Your taxes go up quite a bit. And that doesn't include the water. They're not done with the water yet. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. We need an alternative source of water. What about that?
Absolutely. What they're looking at right now in the future, especially this administration, if it goes through, and it's not, and I'm going to divide council from the administration, like the city manager and directors and so on and so forth. They're the problem. That's the cancer. We either take care of the cancer or they're going to kill the city. They're the problem.
Also have council, you had 6 of them who voted to have it in May instead of November. So that means they're being pulled by the unions because they know it's easier to pass a bond election in May because nobody goes to vote. So they can go in there and pack the numbers, right? They can go in there and pack it. So that's not fair. They shouldn't have done that. So they're also part of the problem. And I understand there's only one individual on the council that's against the whole bond issue.
Absolutely.
So, and they're going to come back and say, well, let the voters speak. No, you're not allowing the voters to speak because you're basically putting it when nobody's going to go out and vote. So that's not.
And not only that, there's signs out there that associates have placed in different areas, and they're already tagging them. The building inspectors are already tagging them, and they said, "Look what they're doing." Were you going to expect anything less than that? That happens all the time.
They claimed that they had a lot of input from the community, and the community determined these were the 4 areas that we needed. And the police, which is public safety, and then the other one was the housing, the Hamilton, the public health, and then the streets, right? And they said this is where people. You think people in the community said, "Yeah, we need a new police station"? That didn't come from the people. Where did that come from? That was politically motivated.
Absolutely. I've spoken to many that were on those committees. There were apparently 27, 28. They were divided into sections, into one of the different brackets, into the 4 things. And the city came down and said, "This is what we want you to look at." And a lot of them would say, "How about the water?" "No, but this is what we want you to look at."
Yeah, in other words, who determined that? Who determined those 4 areas? Because it wasn't the voters. They claim it was us, that they had input from us. Yeah, Proposition A, public safety. The other one is public health. And then the other one is the streets, and then senior housing. So who determined that? I mean, and then they're saying that if we don't pass this, this is for economic development. I don't see how that's going to develop the city. Because you have a new police station, that's not going to develop anything. Why don't you just expand the police station you have now? Build out or build up. That's all you got to do if you really need more space. I mean, what?
They don't have parking. Well, build the parking that's several floors.
And what they need to do also is go back to the interlocal agreement we had with the county when I was there. And I think that was a big mistake when they said, "No, we're not going to be providing fire protection outside the city limits anymore." They got rid of the contract. So now the county, you have a duplication of services. And I've always been against that. We shouldn't have a duplication of services. We shouldn't. It's the same taxpayer. The county taxpayer, 90% of the Webb County taxpayer is the city of Laredo. Why should we have a duplication of services? We should just have one department. So, that's how you streamline and you save money. But egos come in. That's the biggest problem. A lot of people have egos, or maybe the city was demanding too much money and the county couldn't afford it. But it seems like we're going in so many different directions. I mean, I don't see the leadership there.
We're
in another drought, and you saw that the headlines that the river is the 5th most endangered river. We got some serious problems, but I've noticed that every time something gets done, there's always a special interest in the back that's trying to get something from the taxpayer. Somebody always wants something from the taxpayer. Just like that project over there, 18 miles north of Laredo. They want our water. That's what it's all about. I wrote letters to the editor about that. That's going to be a big issue, Paul. That's going to be another big issue. They want us to buy water from them so that we can subsidize their project. And then all of a sudden, they're going to want our water, because without water, you can't do anything. But,
well, it's going to be a good one. But right now we have this bond issue out there. And folks, I'm going to end with this because the voter out there needs to understand that they need to go out there and vote. And right now it's early voting. And today, Saturday, tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I believe it finishes on Wednesday, early vote. And then election day is the following Saturday, May 3rd. It's going to be it's a necessity for you guys to go out there and vote. If not, your taxes are going to go high. And believe me, the police aren't going to be any safer. There's a couple of things that I'm going to say here that I want you all to go do your research. And I want you all to go do a research on an old Supreme Court case called the Town of Castle Rock versus Gonzalez of 2005, which basically the police have by no right are obligated, neither constitution or otherwise, to protect you. And so especially when it comes to temporary restraining orders. So this issue, what happened, this horrific event that happened with this young lady about a month ago, it's going to continue to happen because they do not have the right to stop it when stuff like that occurs. So I don't know where they're coming from that they're gonna prevent that. They're gonna prevent safety for women and stuff like that. You can't. It's already, you have no obligation to. So I don't know what they're gonna do about that. But that's the way I look at it, because safety is one thing that I'm into. That's my business, and I've done that in a while. And we get a lot of people and a lot of women that call me from us to teach them because their ex-boyfriend or ex-husband or what have you has beaten them before, has threatened them, and we help them to go get a temporary restraining order, and basically they're left out in the wind. But otherwise, Poncho, I want to thank you for the injunction that you did. I hope there's some redemption coming out of that. Hopefully they hear it right, and hopefully it goes forward. And once more, the only way we can stop this is by the vote. Remember those three beautiful letters that's in that parchment called the Constitution, we the people. So we the people have to go out there and stop this by means of voting.
Yeah, we got to vote. You got to vote against it. And, because your taxes are going to go up sky high, contrary to what they're saying. And this isn't the time to be doing it. There's a lot of economic uncertainty. A lot of capital investment is already kind of slowed down, because people are worried. They want to see what's going to happen first with the tariffs, and so this is serious stuff right now, what's going on. So I recommend everybody go out and vote. I did my part by filing the suit to try to expose what they're doing, and it's really a prelude to some other things I'm going to do, regarding their pensions and salaries and how they violate the charter. But that's what they're doing now. They're just violating the charter. And if we don't do this now, future elections, they're going to do the same thing. In other words, they're turning City Hall into one big cañoneros. City Hall is like cañoneros. That's what they are now. And our tax dollars are paying for them to go out there and block walk and knock on doors to get involved in elections. They're turning City Hall into cañoneros with a service ship program. That's what I'm basically, I should have said that in my brief, cañoneros, because that's what everybody understands what that is, because that's what they're doing. And it's got to come to an end, man. If we don't stand up now, and if no one takes them to task, they're going to do whatever they want, and they're going to continue abusing us, behaving like dictators, and that's what they're doing. So the only way we can stop it right now, is at the ballot box, hopefully, because I don't think the judge is going to grant me an injunction, but at least by filing it, the city has been put on notice. I know what you're doing. We know what you're doing, and it's illegal. You keep doing this, and it's not going to end well for you. It's not going to end well for some of these people, because they cannot be using our money to against us, which is what they're doing. And that really pisses me off that they do that. That they use our money to campaign against us, man, instead of just being impartial, providing information and leave it like that. But no, they have to go out there and campaign against Ford, and that's just illegal. And then they start threatening people.
Absolutely.
I couldn't even get an attorney to represent me because everybody's terrified of City Hall. I had to file it pro se, and I'm not an attorney. I had to do it myself because everybody's scared, and I'm not going to get an out-of-town attorney and pay him $20,000 to do it. I think some local attorneys ought to step up, do it pro bono. You can still get your attorney fees from the government if you win the case, but you should do it pro bono. Forcing me to do this, it's I don't know. Everybody's so scared to speak out.
Yeah, that is a word right there. They're scared of City Hall because City Hall will use their little thugs that work in there to come after you. If you're a small business, they'll send the building inspectors to come after you. You've known that. We've seen that. Witnessed that.
And I understand. People are trying to survive, so they're not going to get involved. They just, every time they tell you, just don't mention my name. That's what they always say. Just don't mention my name. That's what they always say because they're scared. But yeah, the best thing is go vote. Nobody knows how you voted. It's more private than the bedroom. That's what I tell people. Go vote and vote against it. A lot of people don't know. that there's an election going on, and they need to go vote against it because your taxes will go up, and it's not going to be $8 a year. You know what I mean? It's a joke. Like you said, it's only a McDonald's or it's only a Whataburger, right? That's what it is. No, that's not what it is, man. I mean, you're basically, look, the average house in Laredo is worth $259,000. That's what the average house that's sold. If you go, I even have to put those stats in the medium house. It's not 100,000. You can't even get Habitat for Humanity to build a house for 100 grand. You know what I mean? So why are they using 100,000? I know why they're doing it, because it's an increment of 100. It's easier to do the math, right? To do the multiplication.
It's a little psyop, and that psyop doesn't work anymore, and people are waking up.
It's only $9.99 instead of $10, right? It's $9.99. But this is serious stuff. I mean, people, $500 million for that. It's like, what is the voter getting? What's in it for me? I don't see anything in there really for me. What, you're going to get a new police station? I don't see how that's going to make their job. They're going to be able to do their job better on the streets. You should find, somebody was telling me how many police officers patrol the city at night. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how many policemen patrol at night. It's like a dozen of them, from what I understand. That's what they told me. Don't quote me. Huh?
Hey, on New Year's, my next door neighbors at 2:00 in the morning lit my palm trees and trees on fire because they were popping fireworks. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Well, there I am in the middle of the night, 2:30, with a fire extinguisher, putting out a fence and putting out grass and putting out bushes, and they called the fire. They called 911. The fire didn't, and they called them at 2:30. They didn't get here till 3:10. They called the police. The police didn't get here till 6:45. They didn't give them a ticket. Oh, they found they found more fireworks there than in Chinatown. And all of a sudden, you have them saying, "Oh, we can't give them anything because we didn't see them popping it." So why do we have ordinances if you're not going to do that? Oh, you're lucky that the house didn't burn down. I'm like, and I told the police officer, "You're going to give them a ticket?" Oh, I can't. I didn't witness it. So what the hell are you doing here for? I could have gone back to sleep. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but
I don't even know why certain former elected officials are for it. Like the former mayor's for it. But I know now because they're getting ready to run. And that's what bothers me. That the
former mayor is for it.
Yeah, he's for it. I saw it on Hamrod News or something. Somebody sent me the link that the former mayor is for the bond issue. Well, that's because he's getting ready to run for county judge, probably. That's what I hear. Why is it people are always catering to these groups? Why do they cater? Oh, they think more about getting elected or reelected than doing the right thing. I mean, he's
the reason why we're in this mess. For 8 years, he knocked down the city. So,
he's the reason. The former mayor is the reason they got a pension. And in the brief I'm writing, you know what he said? Why he justified getting a pension? Because he uses his own money for campaign expenses to get elected. So he needs a pension because he used his own money to get elected. I mean, that's what he said. I mean, it's in the paper. I mean, I know that issue back and forth. So it's if the council would have never increased their salary, they would have gotten rid of the pensions. They've been more frugal. They'd have more credibility. You know what? Maybe the people right now would be supporting their bond issue, but they have no credibility because they don't care. They don't they don't really care about.
The best one out of that one, and we've because everything you're saying it's on point. But one thing that's forgotten, we want us to trust the police and the unions when they were caught red-handed with voter fraud in the last election. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But this time we won't do it.
And when I ran for mayor, I met with them. I met with the president of the union, and I said, "Hey, are you all going to have debates?" They never had debates. But instead they go out there and they endorse people, or sometimes they don't endorse people, but that, you should listen to everybody's campaign before you start throwing money around. But and I put campaign expenditures as exhibits to show how much money they gave and the conflict of interest that these people who are on the council, they should recuse themselves from voting on certain issues when they have a conflict of interest or a personal financial interest. And if you're getting money from a PAC like that, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. Look what happened, Paul. On a side, I got appointed by the current mayor to chair the Charter Review Commission. I couldn't even get a second motion. They didn't even give me a second. They couldn't vote. They couldn't even vote on me. They didn't even want me. And I took it like, well, that's a badge of courage, because they know I was going to come in there and clean it up and present to the council some real revisions, real reform that they would have to take to the people. Now they probably wouldn't have. They still could have, changed whatever the commissions gave them, but instead they didn't want me there. And what do? They made some changes to the charter that are not in the best interest of it. They're making it easier. They're making it more unethical. They didn't reform it, but that's the way it is, so they don't want. So the only avenue really left now for me is not to go speak before the council, because they're rude to you. They give you 2 minutes to speak, and then they want to shut you up, tell you what you can say and can't. Best thing to do is go to court. You know what? Let's go to court, and in court, I'm going to have all the time I need to present my case. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just going to go to court. I'm not going to waste my time going to City Hall anymore, because they don't respect you. They give you 2 minutes to speak, and then they basically they try to censor you what you say. So but I've had it. My former therapy was talking to people like you about the grievances. That was my former therapy, talking to different people. Yeah, look what they're doing. God, they're out of control. That doesn't work for me anymore, Paul. It doesn't work anymore. Talking to my friends is no longer the therapy. I have to go to court. That's the only way I'm going to get some kind of closure. I have to go over there and
well, thank you for filing the injunction. That's number one. And remind people out there right now, we have to go out there and vote to stop this.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Get your family, friends, pick up the phone, go vote. Go vote. It's very important, because if this bond issue passes, you have no idea what's coming ahead of you, because the valuations aren't going to be going down. You have no idea what you're going to get hit with, and we're just going to have a mess on our hands. It's a mess. They're not, this isn't the time to be doing it. So anyway, I just wanted.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for doing what you're doing, and for everybody standing up on this issue and voicing your opinion, whether you're for or for against. We'll thank you for doing that. Right.
You too, Paul. You and the group that's putting up some money. You all are putting up some coin, getting billboards and putting the signs up. And I know some people are spending money on mail outs and also in the paper. There's an ad in the paper every day. That costs a lot of money. So everybody's doing their part. I did my part. I have a certain skill set. So I said, well, let me go out there and try to file the suit, and I'm going to do some more to try to keep these people honest. But the people, there's a small group out there that are former elected officials that are opposed to it. I know I've seen a lot of your podcasts and they're against it. And there's some business owners. So I don't think it's going to pass, Paul. I really don't. But I'm worried. I am worried.
Listen, in Laredo, it's not over until the count. And we've had a lot of elections here that have been stolen, if you want to use that word,
Well, look what happened last time. You mentioned that some council member won with illegal votes from the police department. So, I mean, maybe you don't know what they're, that also, I didn't even put that in the brief because it wasn't really relevant. But it would have been kind of funny. I mean, even the police department gets involved in voter fraud, which I think it's they're here to protect and serve.
Trust us. Really?
That's one of the reasons. Another reason why people are opposed to this, because you know what? they're upset. Some of us have memories like elephants. We remember that stuff, and we say, you know, you don't deserve this. You all tried to. They tried to put a council member. They elected a council member they could control, but then they got caught with their pants down, and that person got removed, which is really historic for Laredo. It's never happened like that. I mean, there was one that got recalled because of drug charges, but this one got removed. That was historic. It's never happened that I got where they remove you in the middle of your term, you know. And but you know, it's but the police department and the fire unions, they have their hooks into everything. So yeah, you know, I want to thank all those people that are out there, you know, putting signs and working hard, and encourage the voters to go out and vote, because this is really an important election.
We'll leave you all with this. Go vote. Everybody stay safe. Be safe, and God bless you. Thank you again, Poncho, for doing what you're doing.
Thanks a lot.
Until next time, friend, and everybody out there, you all stay safe.
Go out and vote and pray, man. That's about all we can do is vote and pray. That's it. You know.
Until next time.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul.